I'm standing barefoot in my kitchen at 3:17 in the morning, clutching a cup of herbal tea I don't even like, and listening to the silence hum around me like it's holding a secret. My husband, Daniel, isn't in bed. The sheets next to me are cold, the kind of cold that tells you he's been gone for a while. Maybe the bathroom, I thought. Or downstairs grabbing a snack, like he sometimes does when insomnia kicks in. But there's this sound, barely there. A voice, soft and low. It's Daniel's voice, but not the one he uses with me. So before you listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's ease into the story together. I'm Morgan Hayes. I'm 35. I built a luxury wellness company from the ground up over the past decade. Think clean beauty, high-end supplements, holistic retreats, the works. The kind of empire built with long nights, missed holidays, and dreams other people laughed at. But Daniel? He came in when the success was already real. We married 3 years ago. It felt like fate. We met at a charity gala. His tux fit too well, and he made me laugh when everyone else tried to impress me with degrees and hedge funds. And for a while, he made me feel safe, loved, desired. I let him into my life, my home, and foolishly, my bank accounts. But tonight, his voice didn't sound like love. It sounded like strategy. She still doesn't suspect anything. Those words hit harder than any slap ever could. I froze. That wasn't a joke, not even a twisted one. That was Daniel talking about me like I was some pawn. I got up, every nerve screaming. The floorboards creaked as I crept down the hallway toward his office, following the sliver of light under the door. I pressed myself to the wall. My heart felt like it might break through my ribs. "Yeah, I've already transferred it," Daniel said. "It's going as planned. Almost done." Transferred what? Almost done with what? My legs felt hollow. My breath came shallow, tight in my chest. I backed away slowly, retreating to the bedroom like prey, pretending not to know the predator is behind them. I dove under the covers just seconds before the door opened. He slipped back into bed without a sound. I kept my breathing even, my eyes shut. His arm brushed mine like it always did. Like we were still us, but we weren't. That illusion had cracked. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At sunrise, I got up before him. My stomach churned, hands trembling as I poured coffee I didn't drink. My phone felt heavier than ever in my hands. I hadn't logged into our bank accounts in months, maybe longer. I'd handed that power over to him, trusting that he would take care of our future, of us. The screen loaded, my throat dried. $500, $1,000, $2,300. Random amounts, all steadily siphoned off over the last 3 months. Nothing huge at once, but consistent. Quiet. Secret. Daniel had always handled the money stuff. Investments, tax things, even my business accounting through his connections. I'd been so busy growing the vision, building the brand. I'd let him run that part. I thought it was love, delegation, trust. But now it felt like a trap. Checking the bank account this early, Daniel's voice nearly made me jump. He leaned in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his neck like he'd just woken up. That soft smile, it used to make me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. "Just double-checking something," I lied, keeping my voice light. A couple of the transactions looked weird. He walked over, poured his own coffee. "Oh, those. Just a few small investments. Crypto stuff. I meant to tell you." His tone was dismissive. His eyes avoided mine. My blood ran cold. "Right," I said softly, sliding my phone into my pocket. I knew then, deep down, that something much bigger was unfolding. But I needed proof. I needed to be smarter than him. And above all, I needed to pretend that I still didn't know. Because now I did suspect something. And Daniel had no idea that the real game had just begun. That day, I became someone else. Not the Morgan who used to laugh too loud in meetings or sing off-key in the shower. I became quiet, watchful. I studied Daniel the way a chess master studies a board mid-game, looking not at where the pieces are, but where they're going. And he played his role well, too well. Every interaction became a performance. He smiled the way he always had, leaned in with interest when I talked about work, even brought home flowers one night. Peonies, my favorite, which should have made me melt. But instead, I wondered if they were a distraction. At dinner, I asked him casually about those crypto investments he'd mentioned. He shrugged, chewing slowly like the question bored him. "You know I've been dabbling," he said. "Some startup tokens, nothing serious." I nodded. "Cool, maybe we can review it together sometime. I'd love to learn." His eyes flicked up for half a second, just a flick, but I caught it. That moment of calculation, the hesitation. "Sure," he said too easily. "Anytime." That's when I knew he had something to hide. Because Daniel used to love explaining things to me. He'd walk me through every stock he touched. Not this time. Now, he was avoiding specifics, like they were poison. That night, as he stepped outside to take a call, I followed. Quiet, careful. He stood on the back deck, facing away from me, phone pressed tightly to his ear. "Yeah? No, she hasn't caught on. She thinks it's just some weird withdrawals. Idiot." My breath caught. I backed away into the shadows, my heart thundering in my chest. I didn't even want to hear the rest. He wasn't just being sneaky. He was cruel. Back inside, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face looked different, not older, not sadder, just harder, like I'd grown armor. I started making lists. Every account, every login, every shared asset. I stayed up all night resetting passwords, locking everything down that still had my name on it. Some were already empty. Some I hadn't even known existed until now. He had drained over $120,000 in total, spread across 6 different accounts. Gone. Slipped out in small amounts, just below the threshold that would trigger alerts. If I hadn't checked when I did, I don't even know. The next morning, Daniel seemed relaxed. Too relaxed. He brought me coffee like always, kissed my forehead. "Busy day today?" I nodded, sipping slowly. "Yeah, thinking of reviewing the estate paperwork too." He tensed, just a tiny shift in his jawline. "Why?" he asked. "Is something wrong?" "Just life stuff," I said, shrugging. "I want to make sure we're both protected." That night, I tried to access a shared investment fund. My login was revoked. His name was now the primary holder. I wasn't just being paranoid. He'd been preparing, locking me out piece by piece. And still, I said nothing. I smiled. I let him think I was clueless. Until the phone incident. We were on the couch. He stood abruptly. "Gonna shower." Normally, Daniel took his phone everywhere, even into the bathroom. But that night, he left it on the coffee table, unlocked, screen up. And it buzzed. I froze, then reached. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I did. I picked it up, heart pounding, and the screen lit up. "Felix Stanton, send her Ilium Morrow, message. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost done." I stared. Ilium Morrow, who the hell was that? And that phrase again. Almost done. My hands were shaking. I placed the phone back just as I'd found it, like it was a bomb I'd narrowly diffused. He was planning something final, and I was running out of time. After he went to bed, I stayed up again, scrolling, searching, Googling the name Ilium Morrow. Nothing. But I did find something on Felix Stanton, his contact name. A financial fixer. Sketchy online footprint. Tied to several lawsuits and alleged fraud claims. Nothing proven, nothing official, but enough to make my stomach twist. This wasn't just about hiding money. Daniel was orchestrating a takedown of me, my company, my name. And if I didn't move fast, I'd lose everything I'd built. The morning after I found Felix's message, I couldn't look at Daniel the same way. Not without seeing the snake coiled beneath the silk. I studied his movements like I was learning a foreign language, one I should have known all along. He asked me how I slept. I said, "Like a rock." He grinned, not knowing I'd been wide awake, plotting. That day, I made the most important phone call of my life. I waited until he left for the gym. He always took an hour on Wednesdays. I grabbed my phone and dialed the only person I trusted with my life, Rachel Monroe, my best friend since college. A corporate lawyer now, brilliant, unshakable, loyal. She picked up on the second ring. "Morgan," she said, concern already in her voice. "I need help," I whispered. like Daniel could hear me from across the city. It's Daniel. He's planning something. He's transferring money. I don't even know what he's doing, but it's big, and it's coming fast. I told her everything, the late-night whispers, the withdrawals, the message from Felix, the shift in his behavior. Rachel didn't interrupt once. She just listened, like an anchor holding me steady while the storm raged. When I finally stopped talking, she exhaled. "Morgan," she said, voice calm and clear, "you need to protect your assets. Today, not tomorrow, not next week. Today." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "We're going to set up a blind trust," she continued. "We'll move everything, liquid assets, real estate, company shares, under your name, but behind a layer he can't touch. He'll have no legal claim once it's done." "What about the prenup?" I asked. "He hasn't filed anything yet, right?" "Not yet." "Then it's not too late." That was all I needed to hear. By noon, I was in Rachel's office, eyes burning from sleepless nights, but focused like a hawk. Her team worked fast, faster than I thought was even possible. I signed documents with a trembling hand, but with every page, I felt a tiny sliver of my power returning. By the end of day 3, we'd done it. Everything was moved. My name was the only one on the deed to our penthouse. The investment accounts were rerouted. The business accounts had been fortified. Daniel wouldn't see it coming. And still, I played the part, smiling, laughing at his awful jokes, letting him think everything was fine. The next evening, I sat at our kitchen island while he made dinner. Pasta, his specialty. His confidence was palpable. He poured me a glass of wine, watching me over the rim like he already owned the outcome of whatever was about to happen. He leaned in, voice casual. "I've been thinking." I waited, sipped. "We should reorganize our finances a bit," he said. "Just as a precaution. You never know what might happen." I looked at him slowly. "What kind of reorganization?" He smiled. "Just consolidation, combining accounts. Streamlining things in case something unexpected comes up." "Like a divorce?" I asked, deadpan. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, just for a second. He chuckled. No, don't be dramatic." I held his gaze steady and cold. "Then what?" He hesitated. "Look, I just think it's smarter. I'll handle the paperwork. All you have to do is sign." My stomach flipped, but my face didn't. "Okay," I said sweetly. "Just let me see the documents before I do." He blinked. That wasn't the reaction he expected, but he recovered. "Of course, I'll get them to you tomorrow." I smiled, my chest tight with rage and satisfaction. He thought I was still the same woman who believed his promises. He didn't realize I'd already moved everything. When he left the next morning, I sat at my desk, staring at the email from Rachel confirming the final transfer. It was done. That night, he came home early, dressed like he was walking into a business negotiation, papers in his hand. "Morgan," he said, placing the folder on the table. "We need to talk." I closed my laptop, folded my hands. "Okay." He straightened. "I want a divorce." No hesitation, no remorse. "I think it's for the best," he continued. "We've grown apart. I don't want things to get messy." I tilted my head. "Really?" He nodded. "This isn't easy for me either, but I think it's the right move." I stayed quiet. Let the silence fill the space between us. Then I slid the folder back across the table. "Before we talk about any of this," I said softly, "there's something you should know." His brow furrowed. "What is it?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I've already moved everything." His face changed instantly. The color drained. The easy confidence vanished. "What?" he asked, voice low. "My assets, the business, the properties, the savings. Everything is legally out of your reach now." He stood up. "You can't do that." I did. His jaw clenched. "You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "You were planning to blindside me. I just beat you to it." He stood there for a moment, fists clenched, trying to process that the game he thought he'd been winning was already over. He didn't speak right away. Daniel just stood there, his breathing shallow, his hands balled into fists like he was physically holding himself back from exploding. The man who used to make me feel like I could rest, finally rest, was now a stranger standing in my kitchen, flushed, furious, and cornered. Finally, he sat down slowly, trying to mask the panic swirling in his eyes. "So what? You're just going to cut me out completely?" I looked at him for a long moment. "That was never the plan, Daniel, but you changed the rules. You decided to play games behind my back, to lie, to steal. So yeah, I adapted." "You think this is over?" he asked, his voice low, almost amused. "You really think you can just block me out and walk away clean?" I leaned forward slightly, meeting his gaze. "I don't think, I know." He stormed out after that, said he needed air. He left the documents on the table, unsigned and already obsolete. I waited until I heard the elevator close before I collapsed against the counter, the adrenaline draining out of me like a leak I couldn't plug. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I reread every transfer confirmation Rachel had sent me. I clutched those PDFs like they were armor. They were, because I knew him. Daniel wasn't going to take this quietly. And I was right. 3 days later, it began. A thick envelope landed on my doorstep. Legal stationery, his lawyer's name embossed on the corner. I opened it with numb fingers. Divorce proceedings, formal. But that wasn't the shock. It was the demands. He wanted half of everything. The company I built from nothing. The penthouse I bought with the first 7-figure payout. The stocks, the cars. Even my dog, Luna, my sweet rescue shepherd who hadn't warmed to him in months. And spousal support for him. I called Rachel immediately. "You're not going to believe this," I said, flipping through the papers. She chuckled bitterly. "Let me guess. He wants the moon." "And the stars," I muttered. "He doesn't have a leg to stand on," she said firmly. "You moved everything before he filed. We're clean. He can shout all he wants. He can't touch a dime." "And the support request." "He's not entitled to anything. You were the primary earner. Always have been." I let out a long breath, but my body stayed tense. Because I knew Daniel. I knew this was just his opening move. He wouldn't take the loss gracefully. He'd look for another angle, another way in. And like clockwork, the next attack came through a back door. An anonymous post appeared on a gossip forum that tracked high-profile divorces, especially the wealthy and well-connected. The headline? CEO wife moves fortune to hide money before divorce. Is it legal? My stomach dropped. Because even though it didn't mention my name directly, the details were too specific. Someone knew. Someone had leaked this. Someone wanted to ruin me. Beneath the post were dozens of comments, some nasty, some curious, and then one that stopped my heart cold. "I know who this is. It's Morgan Hayes." My name, my life, out there, spun like a scandal, like I was some manipulative villain. I paced my living room, my breath shallow, rage simmering just beneath the surface. Then I picked up the phone again. Rachel answered on the first ring. "Tell me you saw the post," I said. "I did," she replied, calm, steady, my lifeline. "It's him or someone working for him. I want it taken down. We'll send a cease and desist immediately, and if he pushes, we sue for defamation and intentional damage." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Good. We moved fast. Her team drafted the letter, and I signed it with a hand that barely trembled. I wasn't going to let him spin this, not after everything he'd already tried to take. But the damage was already trickling into my world. Clients sent nervous emails. Journalists hovered on social media, sniffing for a story. One even messaged me directly, subtle but invasive. "Would love your side of things," as if the truth were just a narrative to package. That night, I sat on my balcony, staring out at the glittering skyline, my city, my home, my empire, and for the first time, I felt its weight press back against me. Daniel had underestimated me. But that didn't mean I wasn't exhausted. I checked my phone again, and there it was, another unknown number, another anonymous text. "Be careful, he's not finished." I stared at the screen, fingers trembling. The number was untraceable, the words simple, but the implication was clear. Daniel wasn't just fighting for money anymore. He was fighting to destroy me. And I had to decide, was I going to let that scare me? Or would I fight fire with fire? The next morning, I walked into Rachel's office with a steely calm that didn't match the storm inside me. I was wearing all black, not out of some dramatic flair, but because something inside me had clicked. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was preparing. And Daniel, he had no idea what was coming. Rachel looked up from her desk, her expression unreadable. "You're not going to like this," she said, sliding a manila folder across the glass toward me. I opened it, half expecting more divorce papers. It was worse. Court documents filed by Daniel, financial records with my name on them, documents alleging that I had hidden assets, falsified statements, committed fraud. The transactions listed were damning, wire transfers I'd never made, accounts I'd never opened, dozens of pages of supposed evidence. And every line was a lie. My hands shook slightly as I flipped through them. "These aren't mine," I whispered. Rachel nodded. "I know." "Where did he get this?" She leaned back, arms crossed. We dug into the signatures, the timestamps, the bank codes. And guess who popped up again? "Felix Stanton," I said flatly. "Bingo." She opened a second folder, this one thinner but far more dangerous. Felix has been linked to document forgery in 3 separate lawsuits, never convicted, but always just close enough to the fire. "Why isn't he in jail?" I asked, anger rising like bile. "Because he's good," Rachel said, "but this time, he slipped." She handed me a page with a list of transactions Daniel's legal team claimed I had made in May. "Now look at this." She showed me a bank account registration page. "You didn't even open this account until July." I blinked. "So how could I have transferred money from it in May?" "Exactly. He forged the entire timeline," she said, her voice sharpening. "We have a case for fraud, for fabrication of evidence, and depending on how bold we feel, for malicious prosecution." My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to scream, cry, punch something, but instead, I did the one thing Daniel never expected. I smiled. "We're suing him." Rachel nodded once. "We're suing him." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my dining table, staring out at the quiet city. The skyline sparkled, distant and cold. I sipped slowly, savoring the weight of the moment. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't victory. It was clarity. Daniel was willing to destroy everything to win, my career, my name, my peace. But in his desperation, he'd handed me a weapon. 3 days later, we filed. The countersuit named Daniel Hayes as the defendant. It accused him of falsifying financial documents, forging transaction histories, attempting to defame and financially harm me, and conspiring with known fraudster Felix Stanton to do so. We attached every receipt, every screenshot, every inconsistency. The filing hit him like a brick. The next evening, he showed up at my building unannounced. I only knew because the front desk called me, unsure whether to let him up. I told them no. Let him stew downstairs. Let him wonder if I was watching him from above, sipping tea like a queen, ignoring the jester outside the gates. And still, he tried one more time. Another message, another unknown number. "This isn't over. You're going to regret this." I blocked it instantly. No fear, just finality. 2 weeks later, we had our first court hearing. Daniel arrived in a tailored suit, his new lawyer beside him, a slick, overconfident man with the kind of smile that screams, "I win cases before I enter the room." Rachel and I were already seated, prepared, calm. My heart beat steadily. No rush, no chaos, just presence. The judge was older, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. He reviewed our submission carefully, flipping through each page with surgical precision. When he reached the timeline discrepancy, the May transactions from a July account, he paused, looked over his glasses at Daniel's side. "This is a serious inconsistency," he said, "and it goes to the credibility of the defendant's entire filing." Daniel shifted. His lawyer tried to recover. "It was likely a clerical error, Your Honor. No, the judge interrupted. "You don't make clerical errors across 27 forged documents." My breath caught. The judge continued, "If this evidence was knowingly falsified, this court will consider sanctions." Daniel's mask cracked right there in that courtroom. For the first time, he didn't look smug. He looked cornered. That night, I went home and sat in silence. No music, no wine, just me and the knowledge that I was finally pulling ahead in a game I never wanted to play. Daniel had underestimated me. He saw love as weakness, trust as foolishness. But he forgot that I built my life from scratch once before. And I'd do it again if I had to. Only this time, I'd do it with fire in my chest and steel in my spine. When the judge ruled that Daniel's fabricated evidence would be investigated further, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd retreat, lick his wounds, let the divorce settle, and disappear into the oblivion of men who gamble and lose. But Daniel, he didn't know when to quit. He doubled down. Another envelope arrived, this one from a different law firm, his new team. They were trying a new tactic, character assassination. A compiled list of behavioral patterns they claimed showed I had a history of financial manipulation. Screenshots of emails I'd never written, quotes from employees I'd never hired, and, my personal favorite, a completely made-up meeting where I supposedly threatened Daniel in front of a business partner. The partner listed? Retired, out of the country, hadn't spoken to either of us in 3 years. They were desperate. I could smell it on the paper. Still, it stung. Watching someone you once shared your dreams with now drag your name through the mud like it was sport. I called Rachel again. "You're going to love this," she said, her voice almost playful now. "They made another mistake." "Please tell me it's big." She snorted. "Oh, it's enormous. One of the witnesses who swore under oath that you forged documents. He used to work for Felix Stanton. Guess where he is now?" I blinked. "Prison?" "Close. Under indictment for fraud in a separate case. His testimony is worthless." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes the universe hands you a sliver of poetic justice, wrapped in pure irony. Rachel got to work. We submitted a rebuttal that tore through Daniel's claims like wildfire. Line by line, we disproved everything. Attached receipts, emails, sworn statements from employees who were actually real. By the time the response was filed, even his new legal team had to be reeling. And then the real bombshell hit. Rachel's forensic team traced one of the supposed anonymous posts about me, the one accusing me of hiding money, to an IP address registered under Daniel's name. He hadn't even bothered to use a VPN, just posted it straight from his home office. We filed an additional claim: defamation, cyber harassment, and malicious intent to damage reputation and business. At that point, I stopped crying about what I'd lost and started calculating what I could win. And I was going to win. Because Daniel didn't know this version of me, the version who stared him down in court, dressed not for elegance, but for war. The version who didn't blink when his lawyer tried to undermine me, who sat upright, hands folded, as the judge read the findings aloud. It was a quiet day in court. The room smelled faintly of old carpet and copier toner. I remember the way Daniel shifted in his seat, as if trying to shrink into the expensive fabric of his suit. "The court finds that several pieces of evidence submitted by the defendant," the judge said, voice even, "have been deliberately falsified or constructed through unlawful means. This includes fraudulent financial documents and misleading testimony." My heart pounded like a drum. Due to this, the court dismisses all of Mr. Hayes' claims and demands, effective immediately. There was a hush, the kind that wraps around the inside of your skull and makes everything feel more real. And then the judge continued. "Furthermore, due to the intentional submission of false information, Mr. Hayes will be required to pay the plaintiff's legal costs in full and is subject to further investigation regarding perjury and fraud." Daniel's face crumbled, just a little, but enough. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, staring at the man who thought I'd break, who thought I'd be soft enough to let him devour everything I'd built. Outside the courthouse, the wind tugged at my coat. Rachel stood beside me, silent for a while. Then she asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. The fear, the betrayal, the exhaustion. Like I'm breathing for the first time in months. She smiled. "You should. You earned it." But even as I stood in that moment of victory, I knew the game wasn't truly over. Daniel was the kind of man who'd burn his own house down just to make sure you didn't get to live in it. And sure enough, I was right. The next day, a reporter showed up at one of my wellness spas. Asked the front desk manager if the owner was available for comment on the court ruling. No cameras, not yet, but the sharks were circling. Rachel had warned me, he's going to try and spin this. Make you look like a scheming gold digger who trapped him. I looked at her, bone-tired but unflinching. Then let him try. We put out a statement through my PR team, measured, clear, and backed by legal fact. No emotion, no drama, just truth. By now, people were talking. Not just gossip bloggers, but real publications. And the thing about real reporters? They check sources, they verify. And they found what we already knew. Daniel had lied, cheated, manipulated. And I had receipts for every accusation. Over the next few weeks, his credibility shattered piece by piece. His company distanced itself. Clients backed out of deals. Even his luxury condo, his pride and joy, was quietly listed on the market. The life he'd built on my coattails was crumbling. Not because I tore it down. Because he did. He underestimated one thing. That sometimes the softest voice in the room isn't weakness. It's warning. And when you ignore it long enough, it becomes the last sound you hear before everything falls apart. It's strange, isn't it? The way people vanish when their lies catch up to them. Daniel stopped reaching out after the court ruling. No more surprise visits. No more smug texts from burner phones. Just silence. Deafening, eerie silence that made me question if the storm was really over, or just gathering strength somewhere out of sight. And yet, even in that silence, his fingerprints remained. Anonymous tips started floating around, whisper campaigns online, a tweet here, a comment there, all clearly planted by someone trying to turn the narrative. Morgan Hayes financially manipulated her husband into signing away everything. She moved money to avoid paying fair divorce terms, red flag energy. Classic CEO power trip. Men always lose in court, even when they're right. The tone varied, the goal did not. I knew Daniel was behind it. I also knew I couldn't afford to respond emotionally. I'd come too far to throw punches just because they felt good. This wasn't about catharsis. It was about closure. Final, ironclad, courtroom-backed closure. Rachel scheduled another call. She was already 5 steps ahead. We issue a formal cease and desist to every media outlet carrying his narrative, she said, fingers clacking across her keyboard. But the real win? We go after damages. You mean more court? I asked. She nodded. Only if he doesn't settle. I sipped my coffee. Oh, he won't. You know him? Then we'll take everything he has left. She wasn't being vindictive. Rachel never was. But she believed in justice, the clean kind. The kind that builds peace, not just punishment. 3 days later, we sent letters, not just to Daniel, but to his lawyer, to the sites hosting his stories, and even to the financial platforms he'd tried to manipulate. The tone was direct. Retract the falsehoods or prepare for defamation suits. We attached all our evidence, all the court rulings, all the exposed forgeries. And then the unexpected happened. One of the financial news sites publicly apologized. We have reviewed new legal documentation, they wrote, and retract our previous story regarding Morgan Hayes. We regret the oversight. It wasn't just a win, it was a public cleansing. After that, things began to shift. More media outlets stopped covering the gossip and started focusing on the facts. My team launched a campaign around financial empowerment for women, leaning into transparency and storytelling. What started as damage control became a movement. We called it Taki, not yours to steal. And suddenly, I wasn't just the woman who beat her cheating husband in court. I was a survivor, a strategist, a voice for others who'd been silenced in private, gaslit in courtrooms, or ruined online. The messages poured in. Emails from women whose husbands had done the same, DMs from strangers thanking me for standing up. One woman wrote, "He drained my retirement account and said it was for us. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy." I cried reading that one. Because I knew how it felt, to stare at an empty account and wonder how someone you loved could see your success not as something to celebrate, but something to steal. One night, as I walked home from an industry dinner, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number, again. This time, I let it ring. No dread, no hesitation, just curiosity. I answered. A familiar voice, low and venomous. You think this ends with court documents and press statements. I made you. I didn't flinch. You didn't make me, Daniel. You used me. He kept going. You'll see. People don't forget betrayal. I smiled softly to myself. Good, because I never will. Then I hung up, and this time I didn't just block the number. I reported it. The next morning, my security detail got upgraded. Rachel insisted. He's not dangerous, but he is desperate, she said. That's enough to warrant caution. She was right. It's easy to pretend the storm is over just because the skies look clear. But real peace comes from preparation, and I was ready now, in every way. A week later, I stood in front of a room full of women at a financial literacy event, telling my story, my real story. Not the tabloid version, not the sanitized version. Just the truth. I told them about the whispers in the hallway, the moment I realized love had become leverage, the passwords I changed, the money I moved, the lies I uncovered, and the power I reclaimed. I'm not here to tell you to distrust your partner, I said, but I am here to tell you, always know your worth and protect it, because no one else will do it for you, not even the person who swears they love you most. The applause was soft but real. No standing ovations, no fireworks, just dozens of women nodding, some wiping away tears. That was enough. Afterward, one woman came up to me, young, nervous. She couldn't have been more than 25. Do you ever stop feeling like you're looking over your shoulder? She asked. I thought about it, about the texts, the silence, the rage that still flickered beneath Daniel's every move. And I said, no, but I've learned that just because you look back doesn't mean you're not moving forward. That night I slept. Really slept. The kind of sleep that doesn't end with your heart racing, the kind where your jaw unclenches, the kind that tells you you survived. Not just the betrayal, but yourself. There's a certain silence that follows survival, not the kind that echoes with emptiness, but the kind that feels earned, like standing at the summit of a brutal climb, bruised, breathless, but unshakably alive. That's where I found myself. And then the silence broke. The court scheduled a full evidentiary hearing, a final reckoning. Rachel called it the home stretch, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a battlefield. Daniel had new counsel again. His last team dropped him after the fraud exposure. Professional ethics, I imagine. His latest lawyer had the look of someone who had no idea what he'd signed up for. And honestly, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. We walked into the courtroom like warriors, not victims. Rachel beside me, chin high, heels sharp. I wore navy blue, not black. I wasn't in mourning anymore. I was in motion. Daniel sat across from me, fidgeting with a pen. His confidence was gone, replaced by forced calm. His eyes flicked up to mine once. I held his gaze just long enough to make it clear. You started this war. I just finished it better. The judge didn't waste time. We're here to resolve all remaining claims, including defamation, falsification, and financial misconduct, he said, voice firm. Miss Hayes, you may proceed. Rachel took over like she'd been waiting her whole life. We present undeniable proof, she began, sliding evidence packets to the clerk, that the defendant, Mr. Daniel Hayes, knowingly submitted fraudulent documents to this court with intent to harm, mislead, and extract financial benefit from the plaintiff, Morgan Hayes. She laid out everything like dominoes. The timeline discrepancies. The fake witnesses. The IP address linked to slanderous posts. The money traced back to Felix Stanton. Then the crown jewel, our forensic report. Here, Rachel said, her voice calm but dangerous. Our transaction records Mr. Hayes claims originated from the plaintiff's personal accounts, but as you can see, they are dated prior to the account's actual creation. The courtroom was quiet, save for the rustle of papers. The judge flipped through the folder. I see that clearly. Rachel continued, additionally, we've included corroborated statements from cybersecurity experts, confirming that posts made to damage the plaintiff's public image were authored from Mr. Hayes' residence IP address. Your Honor, this was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated attack. I watched Daniel's shoulders slump inch by inch. His lawyer barely spoke. There was nothing to defend. Then came Daniel's turn. And for the first time, he didn't deny it. "I made mistakes," he said, voice low, barely audible. "Things got out of hand." The judge blinked slowly. Mistakes don't usually involve 27 falsified documents, online slander, and collaboration with a known fraudster. Daniel looked down at the table. And that was it. No fiery outburst, no last-minute lie. Just defeat. The judge cleared his throat. Due to the overwhelming and documented evidence, all remaining claims against Miss Hayes are dismissed with prejudice. He paused, then delivered the part I didn't dare hope for. Furthermore, Mr. Hayes is found liable for defamation, submission of fraudulent court materials, and conspiracy to commit financial harm. He is ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $1.7 million, including damages and full legal costs incurred by the plaintiff. I didn't move, I didn't exhale. It was too much, too big. The judge's voice softened slightly. "Miss Hayes, this court recognizes your composure, preparedness, and clear legal merit. You may consider your reputation not only intact, but officially vindicated." I closed my eyes for half a second. And let it go. That evening, I walked out of that courthouse taller, not because I'd won, but because I hadn't lost myself to the game he tried to drag me into. Daniel followed me into the hallway. Of course he did. "Morgan, wait," he said, voice strained, desperate. I turned slowly, already pulling my coat on. "What, Daniel?" He looked worn down, older, smaller. "You didn't have to go this far." I tilted my head, a slow smile forming. "No, but I could. And that's what terrified you, wasn't it?" He didn't respond, just stared at me like he was waiting for a sliver of the old me to show up, the one who would forgive, make peace, fold. But she wasn't coming. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "That's the worst part. I don't even think about you anymore." And then I walked away. I didn't look back. Later that week, the news broke. Daniel's company severed ties with him. The statement was short and cold. "We do not condone fraudulent behavior." He sold the sports car, his apartment was listed, and all those men online, those anonymous voices who once called me a liar, they went quiet. Because nothing speaks louder than truth. And money in your own name. That weekend, I hosted a quiet dinner with my closest friends and my sister. Rachel came too, arrived late, holding a bottle of wine like a victory flag. We sat on my terrace under string lights, the city buzzing below us. "To Morgan," Rachel toasted, "the woman who didn't just survive, but scorched the damn earth." I laughed, clinking glasses. Not scorched, just replanted. Because that's what it felt like. Like I'd taken the ashes and turned them into something new, stronger, wiser, rooted in truth, not illusion. I don't think I'll ever be the same person I was before Daniel's betrayal. But I don't want to be. That version of me didn't know how sharp she could be, how calm in chaos, how clear when it mattered most. Now I do. The weeks after the ruling felt unreal, like walking through a dream that finally turned in my favor. Every morning I'd wake up and wait for the other shoe to drop, for the threat that never came. I'd check my phone like clockwork, expecting some new attack, a smear, a summons, a message. But none came. Daniel was gone, not physically. He still existed somewhere in the city, in some condo with a downgraded view. But spiritually, socially, reputationally, he'd vanished. Every connection he used to brag about had gone quiet. His social accounts locked. The consulting work he once scoffed at, now his only option. He'd tried to destroy me, but instead, he'd destroyed every last piece of leverage he had. And me? I was rebuilding, but not in the way most people expected. I didn't go on a revenge shopping spree. I didn't post cryptic empowerment quotes or plan a triumphant rebranding campaign. I did something much more radical. I slowed down. I booked a small lake house 2 hours outside the city. Just me, my dog Luna, a couple of sweaters, and a journal. I let myself breathe again, really breathe. No headlines, no courtroom drama, no calculated moves. Just silence. And in that silence, the grief finally arrived. Because as much as Daniel had wronged me, There had been real moments between us, real memories, real love, or at least the kind of love I believed in at the time. The kind where you see someone's flaws and still choose them. I had chosen him. He had plotted against me. And reconciling those two realities took longer than any court battle ever could. I spent long walks by the lake asking myself the questions I'd avoided for months. How did I miss the signs? Why didn't I listen to my gut? Had I trusted too much, or just the wrong person? But then I'd remember I did listen to my gut. Eventually, I moved, I protected myself. I fought back with clarity, not vengeance. And that's strength. Strength isn't knowing everything before it happens. Strength is what you do when it does. I returned to the city in early spring. My apartment felt lighter somehow, though nothing had changed. The art on the walls, the candles on the counter, even Luna's bed in the corner, all the same. But I had changed, and that changed everything. My assistant handed me a manila envelope on my first day back at the office. No name on the return address. Inside, a letter, handwritten. Daniel. It wasn't angry or apologetic. It wasn't really anything at all. Just a string of disconnected thoughts, regret without clarity, blame without ownership. The same cycle I'd seen in him for years, just now on paper instead of whispered through clenched teeth. At the bottom, one line. I hope one day you'll remember us as something more than this. I read it twice, then fed it through the shredder. Because sometimes closure isn't a letter. Sometimes it's knowing you don't need one anymore. The next few months were a quiet kind of bliss. I went to therapy. I took weekend hikes. I learned to cook something that wasn't avocado toast. And when people asked me what happened, I told them the truth. Not every detail, not every ugly twist. Just enough to remind them, women like me don't fall. We adapt. We get smarter, sharper, quieter, but never weaker. One night, Rachel and I sat on my balcony again, sipping wine under the soft glow of the city skyline. We hadn't talked about Daniel in weeks. Do you ever think he'll try something else? I asked quietly. She took a sip, thoughtful. Maybe, but it won't matter, because he doesn't scare you anymore. She was right, he didn't. What scared me now was forgetting how close I came to losing everything, to mistaking comfort for safety, love for loyalty, charm for honesty. But I hadn't forgotten, and I wouldn't. That's why I started writing. Just for myself at first, late at night, hunched over a notebook, spilling out the story in jagged lines and barely coherent paragraphs. Then I shared one entry online, just a snippet. It blew up. Not because it was salacious, but because it was real. I turned it into a blog, then a podcast. I interviewed other women, executives, entrepreneurs, creatives, who had been manipulated, silenced, betrayed, and had clawed their way back. We called it Reclaimed. Within 6 months, it had sponsors. Within a year, it had a book deal. And through it all, Daniel's shadow faded. Not because I ignored it, but because I stood in the light long enough to dissolve it. I didn't just reclaim my fortune. I reclaimed my narrative. And in the end, that was worth more than any zero on a bank statement. The evening I held the first printed copy of Reclaimed in my hands, I cried. Not the sharp, hot tears of anger that used to burn behind my eyes during those long courtroom days, but the soft kind. The kind that sneak up on you in moments of stillness. The kind that whisper, "You made it. You really made it." It wasn't just a book. It was proof that I'd survived, rebuilt, and turned my story into something powerful, something bigger than me. That weekend, we hosted a small celebration at a quiet rooftop venue. No press, no influencers, just close friends and women who had trusted me with their own stories. The city skyline stretched around us like an old friend, familiar and vast. Rachel gave a short speech, half roasting, half heartfelt. To Morgan Hayes, she said, raising her glass, the woman who turned betrayal into a blueprint, who stood her ground when the floor fell out, and who taught us all that protecting your peace doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. I laughed, blinking back more tears. Celeste, my older sister and forever cheerleader, leaned in close. "Mom would be proud of you," she whispered. And I think she would. Not because I'd won, but because I'd walked away whole. At the end of the night, I stood alone on the rooftop, letting the wind kiss my skin, the lights flickering below like sparks from some divine forge. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another unknown number. Of course. But this time, I didn't even hesitate. I smiled, tapped block, and tucked the phone away. No fear, no curiosity. Just a gentle goodbye to a ghost who no longer lived in my world. And that's the thing, isn't it? You think the final battle is in a courtroom, or on a spreadsheet, or with a pen trembling above divorce papers. But it's not. It's here, in the moment you realize the war is over, not because you defeated your enemy, but because you stopped giving them power. That night, I sat down to write one last journal entry. I didn't know it would be my last on this chapter, but my hand seemed to know. It moved slowly, deliberately, like it was closing a loop. I wrote to Daniel. Not a letter I'd ever send, just a final echo. Daniel, you didn't just try to take my money. You tried to take my trust, my name, my peace. And for a moment, you almost did. But I didn't break. I became something you never expected. Untouchable. Not because I fought harder, but because I healed louder. Goodbye. I tore out the page, lit a match, and watched the paper curl into ash on my balcony table. A symbolic release, an exhale years in the making. So now, here I am. Still Morgan Hayes. Still the CEO. Still a sister, a friend, a dog mom. A woman who laughs too loud when she drinks good champagne. But also, something more. I'm a survivor of betrayal, not just romantic, but financial, emotional, psychological. The kind of betrayal that makes you question everything, even your reflection. But I'm also a believer that you can lose everything and still win. That justice isn't always swift, but it can be sharp. And that reclaiming your life doesn't mean going back to who you were. It means becoming who you were always meant to be. So let me leave you with this. To the person who tried to dismantle me, you failed. And I hope you learned something from your fall. But that's not my responsibility anymore. To everyone watching, especially those still in the thick of it, you're not weak for loving. You're not foolish for trusting. And you are never, ever wrong for walking away to protect yourself. How did you handle it when someone you loved betrayed you? What was the outcome? Tell me your story in the comments. I promise I'll read every single one. And if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe for more real stories. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Wishing you peace, power, and the clarity to walk away when the time comes. Until next time.